All right, fellas. Well, I guess let's just get rolling with this deal. Fewer people means fewer questions. We'll fly through this. As you guys know, you can hop off. I'll post it on YouTube as well. The only reason to be here really is to ask questions throughout the duration. But let's just go ahead and get this deal rolling. So let's put this guy up here. Okay. So, just to get started real quick. So, my name's David Polakovich, video coordinator. I'm at St. Louis University now. That's kind of my path. I was a manager at Colorado. Went to Weaver State as video, Boise State at video. Spent a couple months at Huddle, kind of mastering my skills, so to speak. And then I was able to get the job at St. Louis. If you guys didn't tune in last week, I know this one is going to be a little bit more advanced and a little bit more specific. I just wanted to talk real quick about why I think these sessions are important, about how hard it is to get a sports code training and a sports code training from somebody who really understands. It helps to hear from someone who's been there and who's done that at different places, different schools. The fact that basketball is my priority, the fact that everything I do in terms of sports code relates back to basketball. And my number one deal is the biggest problem with sports code is that people are never taught how to use it. So I'll talk about that a lot. I got a story of the last session, but I won't bore anybody too much. So I just wanted to talk about shot charts really quickly. Shot charts obviously I think are important. And it was the second thing, the second session that I wanted to talk about because it's something that I think is really great in terms of learning sports code and learning scripting and getting into the advanced pieces of it, particularly for guys at higher, high major Division Ones, NBA, G League. Coaches are looking for guys that can do stuff like this, and I wanted to help with that. And it's a really good way to get your feet wet with it. So in terms of more specifically why shot charts, it's basic information that's not in the box score. It's not always readily available, but a lot of coaches, in college, the halftime film thing is coming on, but the ability to click on shots and use output windows at halftime has been really gaining popularity at the college level. And I know it's obviously a huge deal in the NBA and in the G League. The coaches are visual, and if they can see something really quickly, I remember I started using output reports before it was even a big deal to watch film at halftime in college. And they just love being able to see those things really quickly, know where shots are coming from, defensively, offensively, whatever it may be. The reason I love them is it can help me prove a point. If there's a set that I think that we shouldn't be running, it's tough for me to go to coach and just with my opinion and say, hey, coach, I don't think we need to be doing this. It helps to have some data to back it up. And shot charts are a great way to do that. And I'll show you some other data that I pair with my shot charts in order to help that out. I think it makes you look knowledgeable. I think it makes you look really good if you can go to a coach. You're trying to get a job or you're trying to do whatever it is, and you show these coaches some of the shot charts that you've created. I think it's a cool looking thing, and people love to have the visual aspect of it. And like I said, best way to start understanding scripting. Pro versus elite. I don't know if anybody on here. I know James and Jimmy. I know you guys are both going to be on elite. There are just a couple features that aren't in pro, and I'll get into it here in a second. But the rename function is one. Most people that are on pro licenses aren't even aware of it. Creating movies in output windows. So as I go on, I'm going to show you guys a pro window and an elite window to give you the difference and why those movies are important. And then toggle buttons. I don't have any shot charts with toggle buttons today, but I think it's important to note that it's an option, and I'll show you guys kind of what that looks like. And we'll start with creating a code window. So the first step, in my opinion, is figuring out do you want the code window? Is it important to have the shot chart in the background? Are you okay with just thinking about the locations? In my opinion, the best way to do it is to start out really simple, and I'll show you guys how to do that. So when you go into regular Huddle Sports Code, I'm going to use Huddle Sports Code. I know a lot of people are still using version 11 or Sports Code Classic, as we like to call it. But what's great about it is you can open up a code window and use it the same. You can switch them back and forth between Huddle Sports Code and V11. That's helped me a lot because there's still features missing out of Huddle Sports Code. The first thing you can do, let's make this a little bit bigger, is upload an image as the background of a code window. and I don't recommend doing it this way. I'll show you really quickly, but I think it gets messy. You can scale it to fit, you can scale it to fill, you can scale it as a tile. I don't really know why you'd use that, or you can not scale it at all. And now your chart is just in the background. It's okay. I don't necessarily mind doing this. It's just tough because you're going to want to build your code windows a lot of times around these shot charts, or you're going to want to make this bigger. You're going to want to change it, and it's really tough to do that if you're putting it at the background. That being said, the first code window or shot chart I ever made was with this process. So it's totally up to you. If you wanted to play around with everything, if you have something where you want it to take up the whole window, totally up to you. But the way I would do it is by just simply creating a new button. So you go in here, open up a label button, and just add an image in there. So we'll add that same image, that same shot chart. And then that's just going to be the background. And it's a lot easier to manipulate. You want to take the name and the identifiers off, but it's a lot easier to manipulate and change the size to whatever you want to do, move the button around. And then as you're laying buttons on top of that, it ends up being a lot easier. The first thing to do here, I'll take the stroke out. So now we just have this shot chart in the middle. I'll make it a little bigger for the purposes of this presentation. And that's going to be the way that I would code this, is put the shot in the background. It's just easier to see those locations. And now what you would do is simply start placing label buttons on top of the locations in the simplest way. We're going to go through a couple different levels of how to create a shot chart, but this, in my opinion, is the easiest. So you take labels, and you can call them whatever you want. You can call this one top of the key, for example. Make one right wing. And then, we'll just, for time, we'll say at the rim. And now when you're going in and you're coding these, you're coding based on shot locations, you can use this as your regular code window. You guys can use two code windows alongside. So, if I were to be doing this, I would probably pull up just an offense defense code window or whatever else we needed. But for the sake of this, we'll just throw in a couple of code buttons and we'll pull up a timeline. So we'll just call this possession. And I guess we only need one. So going in here, let's open up a timeline. My man, Nikola Jokic. I'm a Denver guy, so we're pretty enamored with him. So I pulled some film of him. And right here, we already got the codes created, but we can go ahead and make some more code buttons. Hit the location, and now it's just going to come up as the top of the key. And if you understand how labels work, you understand this process. It's really simple to understand. Okay, this is now going to show up as possession number one, top of the key. The other labels that I like to throw in there, just really, really simple, are make and miss. And we'll show here in a second how this looks on an output window. But you show make and miss. And now I'm going to go in here, code another possession, go top of the key again, make it a make, go another possession of the key, go at the rim, miss. And I know that that's not what happened in the video, but just for the sake of this presentation, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys what the deal is here. So now I'm going to show, this is actually the first output window that I ever created. It was a shot chart back when I was at Boise State. And this is kind of what it looks like. Let's get this guy up really quickly. So this is what the first one I ever made was, and it was, this was against San Diego State. It was actually designed for defense. And all it is it's going to get you your makes, your attempts, and then your percentage. And then based on that percentage, it's going to change colors. I don't know if this is, so because it's defensive, you guys will notice that at the top of the key, it's 100%, but because it was defense, that's too high. If this was offense, obviously that would change, but I'll move this to the side a little bit. And now you guys can see the difference locations and everything along those lines. I guess I named that wrong. But the big thing here is now you can understand how these two coincide. So if you guys have any questions, you got to contact me on my phone number at the end. Feel free to ask me about more of the creation of this code window, filling in all the different spots, and then kind of what that looks like. But yeah, I'm happy to share anything with anyone if they have any questions. But then I want to dive into probably what most of you guys are here for, and that's the script. So the easiest way to start this is go right into the makes. Okay, so with this one, all I'm going to say in that script is show, count, top of the key, and make. It's really simple. As we get into this more and more, I'll show you guys the detail that you can get into. But all I would do, and I didn't even, the code window I originally had didn't even have the chart on it. It just had the name of the location, because that was, for whatever reason, how my brain worked. But then on this one, you're going to want to change the script. You're going to have count, top of the key, make, and count, top of the key, miss. Add those up and show the total. And then now with this percentage is where the script's going to get a little bit more complicated. The first thing you want to do is copy that script from the attempts, because that's how it's going to work. The next thing is you're going to want to create a variable, you know, in this case, I just said %, and do the math. And so I can get into more in-depth scripting lessons as far as what this looks like, but you have the variable that are counting all of these numbers. You're adding it up to show a percentage. So it's the attempts, and then, or I'm sorry, the makes and attempts, and then times 100 to show that percentage. And then you want to round that and add a percentage sign. And so that's what that script looks like. You guys will be able to backtrack that and test that on your own. And then the only thing that I did is changing the output color. So this % right here is going to be the number that we're looking for. The reason I multiply it by 100 is because it's going to show up as a decimal. With this, you can either take this variable or you can take whatever level of the variables, but you want to show the button color for, you know, you can do it based on blue, red, and yellow for medium, bad, and I'll get into that more. Like I said, this is my simplest one, but all it is if this percentage is going to be below 35% or equal to it, then the button's going to be green because we're on defense, keep in mind. And then if it's over 35%, it's going to end up being red. So really basic there. That's just kind of, you know, the script. If you guys wanted to pull out a shot chart, if you were coding it yourselves, that's the way I would do it, especially for beginners. I also, little asterisk up here, I had these up here to show the coaches the shooting percentages as well. They had the box scores at halftime or at the end of the game as well, so this wasn't important. This really was just for me to make sure that my numbers were accurate. And as you can see, they're not exactly the same because this was scripted slightly differently from how I had originally put it. But in all, if this were all to have gone perfectly, it would simply say 1 make, 1 attempt, and then 100%. Do you guys have any questions on that?
No.
All right. Yeah, the only all two of you. So that's the first code window I want to run through, and then head back to let's do it really quick. So I showed you guys kind of the idea of creating a code window, and then the importance of the naming. You know, if you're a space off, if you're a letter off, if you misspell something wrong, if it's capitalized when it shouldn't be, the script's going to create issues for you. So I just showed you guys really quickly what it looks like in an output window. I showed you the first format. That's going to be the quickest, and it's going to be the most time efficient. But if you really want to get high level with it, so to speak, you're going to want to start using the zones. And that's going to be getting into basic and more advanced scripts. And so now I'll show you guys what this looks like with the zones, which I prefer. And this is the one that I've kind of worked my way up to figuring out. And let's go into this demo. Oops. Okay, so this is what mine looks like for St. Louis. I went in and did a shot chart for every play of this season. And I'll show you guys real quick when it's finished. So this is what it looks like. It's going to show play one. So let's say, I don't want to give any secrets out, but play one, 55 possessions, how many we scored, points per possession, so on and so forth. And then it also has the zones with the number of shots, the percentage, and then they change color based on the success rate. I actually don't have one here that has yellow, but there is yellow on here for percentages that are kind of in the middle. This one is offensive, so 74% is good, 100% is good. And then if you guys notice, we'll use the rename function here. And you right click on that, you can rename it. I only have a couple in here. So if you wanted to do this for a player as well, it works with our database. So I go in, I type in player one, and then I can see over the last 2 games, he's only taken 1 shot from the corner and 1 shot from the paint. We want to get him more touches, whatever it is. Or why, we can see why he's not getting open. Look at those clips, so on and so forth. Player 2, not shooting the ball very well. What do we need to do? I think this is just an easy way for coaches to go in. I'll screen cap these, print them off, and get them all to coach. But that's what it looks like. And to go into the script and show you guys really how this ends up working, I'm going to change the opacity so you can see all of these right now. So the buttons don't appear. If there were no shots in that location, I don't want to bog coach down with too much stuff. It's going to show up. But what this looks like is a series of buttons that are overlaid. Okay. And this is what it's going to look like. So I showed you guys, we have the yellow down there. And the way the script is going to actually look fairly similar to the one that I showed you guys before, but it's going to get a little bit more dicey. So I always want to label the zone. Okay. So the zone in this one, we just ended up calling it right corner. Okay. The play is going to be button name play 12, which just happens to be this button up here. Play 12. Key now is to combine all those things together. So in order to count a miss, you want to count the 3-point field goals. So obviously it's just going to be what happened on that play when we label it originally. The zone, so in this case it's right corner, and then the play. So in this case it's play 12 or play 1, just so Coach Ford doesn't wake up and strangle me tomorrow. But then you're going to go down here, and it's going to be the same idea. You're going to start the math. So it's attempt equals make plus miss. I did this one a little bit more in depth to show our managers, so it might be a little bit easier to follow. But shooting percentage is going to be make divided by attempt. Percentage is going to be the round of that number times 100 plus the percentage sign, like we did before, and then just a little caveat here: if the SP equals 0, the percentage equals 00. So the difference here is I add separate buttons to show makes, to show attempts, and then to show percentages. But what I did here is I tried to keep it all into one. And so it shows the make originally, it shows the slash on the numbers, and then it shows the attempt, and then there's a space before it shows the percentage. If you guys want to get more in depth than that, you can talk to me about that, but more than happy to. Right here, it's going to show you're going to have the button opacity. So the default opacity for this button, this could be at the top, this could be here, it doesn't matter, is if there's nothing going on, the button's going to be invisible. So it just starts with button opacity. We have that down here as well with if attempt equals 0, button opacity 0. It just really, those things would do the same thing, but it's just kind of covering your butt in a way to, if the script ever goes wrong. The other way is you talk about here. So if the shooting percentage is greater than or equal to 30 and it's less than 40, the button opacity is going to be 100. So that means that because this is the yellow button, it's going to be in that zone. Okay. And the same thing here is the button not only needs to be invisible, but it needs to be to the front of those other buttons. And so with that, you move the button front, you create the button opacity, and then you're good to go. The last thing here is the movie. So I talked about before is the difference between pro and elite is showing the movies on these. With coach, now he can go in and view the movies with the make movie feature. A little redundant, but all it takes now is this is probably the simplest part of the issue before, is you have to make sure that this button is an action button. Okay, so you got all these different types: action, and then make movie versus toggle. You go in, and then this script is going to look almost identical to your counting script, except you're taking out the word count. That command is telling it to create a movie for you. And so if I were to go back in, rename this to play one, and I wanted to see this one attempt on this particular play, I would go into report mode, click on the button, and now it's going to show me that play. I don't want to show it, give away any secrets, but that's the idea. The reason that we have, let's get this all back to regular opacity. So the reason that we have 3 separate buttons is because you can't change the color of a button that you've imported. So the way that I created this, just so you guys are aware, is we went into Photoshop and we used this figure. I wanted to pull this up to show you guys. You can get this online, or I can send it to you, just search zones. So we use this. We kind of placed this on top of a hardwood floor with our logo on it, kind of cut it up into separate pieces using Photoshop, and then exported each one of those pieces in a different color. So it does take time and it takes effort. But I do think it's worth it if you guys may agree or disagree compared to the last one. I think it looks a lot cleaner, and I think it's easier to code, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But that's the gist of it, just to show you guys the scripts on the yellow and green buttons, or the green and red buttons too. It's going to be the same idea, except when you get down here, you're going to be changing the button opacity. So since this is the red, it's when the percentage gets lower than 30. And since this is the, since this is the red, it's going to be the lower than 30 and the button opacity of 100, and it's going to be front if the button's 30. Same thing. The video is going to be the same as with the rest of the script. Is going to be the same on all of these buttons, because you're going to be wanting to watch the same attempts no matter what button is forward. Those zones are just telling you what's best. And then the green one, same idea. If SP is greater than 40, move button front. Any questions? I guess I don't need to keep asking. You guys can just stop me if you really want to. So now let's get a little bit more into some different types of shot charts. I know you guys are excited, as excited as I am. Diving in here. So the other one that I created here is a, well, actually, before we go to that, I want to show you guys how I code it. Let me open up our game code window this year. So this was the code window that we used. I took out our sets and everything, but this is how we coded the games, and this is the little shot chart we use. So as you guys can see, I improved the shot chart that the court that we had in the off season a little bit, but this one is done the same way, where these are all separate buttons that come together, and you click on those zones, and it's easier than having to go in and click on a specific button. So that's how we coded it. We would obviously put, +2, +3, -3, and then the location. I also have it scripted out to where it's each guy has his own zone, so we can do individual shot charts as well, but don't want to get bogged down too much in that this time. Cool. So I want to show you guys that really quickly. Now I'll go ahead and show you guys the spot chart. So I don't really know what to call this. I call it a spot chart because I truly couldn't think of anything else. But this is, similar to what you would look at as a spray chart in baseball. These are going to show you shots from every different spot on the court. This is just a tip of the iceberg example. If I were to really go in and do this, I would make a lot more boxes, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. But in terms of the spot chart, we're going to do it the same way as the other one. You click on the possession. X is for miss, O is for make. You click on the X, and then you click on the location, enter the clip, and then it shows you the spot where the shot was taken. Same for any of these. You go in, click on that, and now you have a good idea of those spot charts. I'll show you the script in a second, but my advice for anyone that does want to go in and do something this detailed, I think this is something that would be great for halftime review. And you want to see really quickly, like if you wanted to have this manipulated by your different sets or, you know, defensive tendencies, whatever it is, I think it's great. It's definitely almost impossible, I would say, to do this over a course of a season. But it's great in small quantities. That being said, I would probably make these boxes about a quarter of the size to allow us to show all of these different locations, and then running into the issue of a shot taken in a similar or exact same location, because ultimately that's going to happen, especially if you have a lot of shots around the rim. Even when looking at professionally done charts, you got to be careful. So even if you wanted to just have smaller boxes around the rim and then bigger ones outside, because you're probably not going to get as many shots in these locations as you are right around there. I guess hopefully not, depending on who you are. But in essence, that's the idea of getting all the spots together in the same location. I'll show you guys the script really quickly on that. So all I did is I labeled each of these spots spot 1. So really simple. Spot 2, spot 3, spot 4. And then I also did the button ID. And if I were to show you what this looks like, so you can see the invisible buttons right there. We'll unclick that. And go ahead and I'll show you the stroke. So now you guys can see the so invisible boxes here that are going to show those X's and O's. What's great about this is that you can manipulate this however you want, just like most things in Sportscode. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys now what the script looks like. It actually is fairly simple compared to what it is before. So it starts out with rename. So kind of like in the shot chart before, where you're starting out with nothing, I just rename and then I put a space in between 2 quotation marks. So the default is going to be nothing. There's going to be no spots, no locate or symbols in that spot at all. The first variable is you're going to count X and count spot 1. So it's going to go ahead and it's going to say if these buttons were both clicked down, then we're going to show that X. If the possession and the O were both clicked down, then we'll go ahead and show the O. The first question I get about that is, well, what if I make a mistake? So what Sportscode does is it takes the most recent label that you've put up. So if I were to have made a mistake on this first spot and I want to go in and change it, it'll allow me to do that. All right. So now that O is red, and that's a mistake that I need to fix. I didn't realize that. But that's the idea is now you can go in, and if you make a mistake, you can essentially fix it. Just going on really quickly about the script. It's going to count those, and it's going to say if the numbers equal 1. So if, you know, count X and count spot 1, if those both pull the same number, which is going to be 1, it's going to rename it to an X, or it's going to rename it to an O, and then give it that text color, which I just realized now is why there's the problem with that coloring. I don't use this chart a lot. It's really just something I've created for a demo, but I do think it can be great. And if that's something that you guys are interested in learning more about, feel free to contact me and let me know. Perfect little segue in here. I want to talk about using synergy data in shot charts. I know it's tough with the import in synergy with the locations. So I want to show you real quick. I mean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with what it looks like in the matrix. These guys are going to give you a breakdown, and it's going to give you kind of a location. It's going to say basket, or it's going to say at basket, or, you know, occasionally it'll say right wing or right block, but those locations are vague. And for anyone that's used Synergy a lot, it quite simply doesn't. Whoops, it quite simply doesn't give you all the data that you need, and it's kind of weird to, it might not always be 100% accurate. It's great in small amounts, but it's just tough sometimes. So using the Synergy data, the best way to do is to go in and use label mode. So what I would show you guys here is, for anyone that hasn't used label mode before, it's really simple. All you need to do is click on the row, click on the little button that says label mode, and then tab through the instances. You can hit shift and tab to go backwards, but it's really simple. And every button that you hit is going to be attributed to that code button. Don't know if I'm being too specific or too vague, but please let me know. So this is what I do in terms of, I just take that shot chart labels window and go in and label all this stuff. So I can do it afterwards with our stuff. I can do it with this NBA stuff that coach looks at. It doesn't matter. What I did is I created these buttons. Whoops, I got all the little yellow flags on them. But all these buttons are invisible. I just took the random colors, whichever one happened to be on front, and now you have all these buttons. So even though they're towards the front, they're all invisible. So when I hit execute, these are all invisible. And it just makes it cleaner, and it's easier for our managers whenever they're cutting to go in and pick these different things. So as you're going in here, I already did the first couple. So I'm going to tab through to the end. And I actually did this one accurately this time, or I hope I did. But let's see here, Joker, top of the key. So all you do is click on that top of the key, see that it shows up right there. Go on to the next clip. All right, left wing. Gosh, I wish he was making more shots. But left wing. And then now I created a code window almost identical to that last one, except it incorporates the Synergy data. So I'm going to go ahead and hit execute here, and this is going to show you exactly what it did for us. All I had to do was use the find and replace tool. And I mentioned I sometimes switch between Huddle Sportscode and version 11. I switched back into version 11 to find and replace what we attribute as plus 2-point field goal to what Synergy make 2 points, I think is what it is. So you go in, and then all of a sudden it's really simple to change that script, and you have it for the Joker's attempts. And so now go in, use that video, see Joker's attempts in the paint. Pretty simple there. As far as using label mode, if you are on pro, you can use a labels tree. And what a labels tree right here is, you can right click on any instance, go to edit labels, and then you should have an option, of whatever's in your code window. It's going to give you an option to add those in here. So if you wanted to add make, you wanted to add misc, you wanted to add a slew of all this crazy stuff that I have here, you could do that. It's obviously pro. It's not as good of a product. It's going to be tougher to do. I used to do it. I decided that it was better to just include the label in the code, but to each his own. Whatever you guys are comfortable with, I'm all for it. So that's kind of the NBA shot chart using that Synergy data. Let's see what else we got here. I think that was it for me. So, 40 minutes in, it's when you guys aren't asking a lot of questions, it's easy. We roll through it.